So what I've decided to do with Michael's agreement is describe to you the boycott story really as the centre pole of it. And we're conveniently located here on the edge of an estate. This was the Brown estate here. And conveniently, the priest here, who was the local activist, working very closely with Michael Davitt, that you might have heard of, who in turn worked closely with Parnell, that you might have heard of. All of that happened here, right here in this place. So I'll try, in the word of Henry VIII to his many wives, I'll try not to keep you too long. Right? The first Brown to come here to this estate, this area in here, there wasn't an estate there then, was a William Brown in 1580, and his father was a horseman for Henry VIII. So there's our connection to the bold Henry Hocht. And then there was several generations of it. So I made a few notes, yeah. William was 1580, and he died in 1602. Then there was a Josias, Josias, strange name. Then Sir John, then George, then Sir John, then Sir John. And finally, the next Sir John was the first one to take the title Lord Kilmaine. Now, what you'll see is actually an extension to the house. The main house is not there anymore. And the extension was started in 1909, May 1909. And if you think by 1922, these places were being burned. That door would be closed and locked, and there was no access there for the paupers, but staff could come in and out in it, and staff lived around, and I'll talk a little bit about those, and I'll tell you some of the names, which are interesting surnames, of some of the staff of the big house in one era. If you looked over that even, you could maybe suffer a bullet. So it was completely different in here to what was out there. And you're all probably fairly familiar with the sort of housing that existed here 150 years ago, 200 years ago, what it looked like, how damp it was, how small, how decrepit and so on. You've probably read bits and pieces of the studies that were done by journalists on the conditions here of the Crishwinter, the local people. And everything inside the wall was so phenomenally different, as you'll now see. Okay, follow me. The main house was there. It was a broad, big, square, fantastic looking dwelling. Interestingly, that disappeared easy enough and this didn't. It suggests quality of structure, quality of build. The other one hadn't been built who knows when, but way back, and this one only 1909. Look at the stonework. This is incredibly detailed worked stone. And you have to ask yourself, who had the skills back that time to do that slowly and patiently and so on. If you look up here, really cool looking stuff. This is the guttering done in worked stone. There was people that make a living doing that, going from big house to big house. We'll go inside for a quick look. Watch your step and come in for just a moment. I have the kettle on. The ironmongery and the timber fascinates me. That timber is as old as me, and it's sitting here and it hasn't rotted beyond what, if it was sitting there 10 years, to be worth of a normal plank of wood. Now, how those things were made, ironmongery goes back quite a bit, but it was in the hands of a small enough number of people. I was looking up the families that kind of controlled it. There was a family in Cork who controlled Cork and Kerry, and there was a family in Leitrim, Roscommon, who controlled all of the west. They didn't easily let anyone into that trade. They only let people into the trade that they could control the people. They didn't want you to come learn the trade, learn how it's done, and clear off and start it in Mayo or start it in Galway. So you can imagine how access to that sort of stuff was the preserve of people who knew the right people, not only had money, yet to know the right people to get them to come, design in with your carpenters what was going to be. Can you imagine what that looked like when it was the roof up there? You see some of it still up there, and a light well here. So it was, in its day, this was bloody impressive. Anyway, if you discern this Greek, you'll find these three things up here were found under the ground somewhere over there in 1725. Found underground in some kind of an underground cavern. And they're known here locally as the gods of the Neale. There's enough evidence now to suggest that there's a deep, old, ancient, pre-Christian history here of some kind of people who were able to carve them out of stone. It was quite fascinating, and they were only found in 1725. Here we're at the house where Father John O'Malley resided. All the Buckhans had much smaller windows with a higher window sill level. The size of those windows was often dictated by the cost of your rent. So improving your house was actually a bad thing. If you improved your house, your rent could go up. This is not a good example of it because the small windows are gone and the big ones are here. So the big ones were a creation of that upgrading. Also a telltale is that that sill is cast in some kind of a concrete. So the original of that would be stone if this was as old, or this format was as old. That's the stone that Father O'Malley sat at. That's the stone that he drank whiskey with Michael Davitt at that stone. Michael Davitt would come here regularly at night. They would drink whiskey and they were plotting the downfall of landlordism in Ireland as it was known then. And you're all familiar with the boycott story of how they withdrew their labour, they made staff move away. They closed their shops in Ballinrobe when they came in to do their shopping. They wouldn't harvest their crops. And so Captain Boycott, who was in Lochmask House, he was an agent for Lord Earn, he wasn't a landlord. That estate was, the Lochmask House estate was now in trouble. And there was now a feeling of, you know, like the pup that followed the bus. You know, what's the pup going to do with the bus if he catches it anyway? We've got rid of Boycott, he's gone. But so what? There's thousands of them. And they were partly saying, we've nowhere else to go with this now. And they're partly saying, hold on, we have a formula now that's cost-free. And the House of Commons have taken note that the peaceful resistance can actually get these people to really think, what are you doing here with this structure called landlordism? This feudalist, horrible structure where there are poor people and rich people and they work for them. And so they were debating all of that. And they were sitting here talking about, what are we going to do? And then they said, well, what are we going to do then about Sir Brown is right here. We've done nothing about him. And Red Pat says, well, I'm writing about this stuff. And, you know, I'm writing for people who are not that well educated. And words like ostracization, I can't be using that. Can you find another way to say how we're going to do all this? And the priest says, we're going to simply do the boycott job on Brown. Right? So we're going to do a boycott on Brown. That's it. That's it. That'll do me. You're going to boycott Brown. Lovely. And he wrote it down. And they argued. And O'Malley said, I was the first to say it. And Redpath said, I was the first to write it. But it went to the world. And now we know the word in the English language so clearly. And Gandhi later picked up on all of that and used it. And Luther King picked up on all of that and used it. Gandhi's son or nephew was here, was it 2000 him? He came back to the local base of where all this happened. So it became a world phenomenon. And it all started where you looked in there at that stone, at that fireplace, drinking whiskey that my great-grandmother would have served them. And that's the big story of Captain Boycott, Father John O'Malley, the big house, the crush venture, the role of the Catholic Church, the gifting in 1880 of a piece of land for the new church. I suspect that Brown was sort of saying, Jesus, I'm next for the treatment. I better cozy up to the Catholic Church because this Father O'Malley has power. Power you can't see. Power, it's undefeatable power unless you take him out. So therein, you've got a feel for architecture. You've got a feel for the movement of time in architecture. You have an excellent example here of a change from what was to what was later to what is now. That's my heritage, which is now yours. Share. Always contact me.